What happens when the wolf you were meant to protect the world with casts you into the winter to die? For Alara Ashwood, life had always been measured in silence. As the Omega daughter of the Silvercrest pack, she learned early that her existence was meant to be small. Quiet footsteps in the margins of pack gatherings, eyes downcast during ceremonies, hands that served but never reached for more. Her wolf was barely a whisper inside her chest, so faint that sometimes she wondered if she had one at all. The other Omegas pitied her, the Betas ignored her, and the Alphas, they looked through her as if she were made of morning mist. But tonight was different. Tonight was the lunar pairing ceremony, when the moon goddess herself would reveal destined mates through the ancient bond, that sacred pull that transcended rank and reason. Alara had felt it for months now, that invisible thread tugging at her ribs, pulling her toward someone she couldn't name. The scent of forest and embers, ozone and steel had been haunting her dreams. She told herself it meant nothing. Omegas didn't get alpha mates. The moon goddess wouldn't be so cruel as to dangle impossible hope before her. Yet here she stood in the Great Hall, surrounded by hundreds of wolves from 5 neighboring packs, all gathered beneath the full moon's silver light streaming through the massive skylight. The air was thick with anticipation, with the mingled sense of nervous excitement and territorial posturing. Pack politics turned these ceremonies into battlegrounds of alliance and ambition. Alphas eyed each other with calculated interest. Betas preened and positioned themselves strategically. And the Omegas, dressed in simple white ceremonial gowns, waited along the walls like ghosts at their own funeral. The scent of lavender and morning dew clung to Alara's skin. Her scent, soft and unremarkable, easily overlooked in the cacophony of power that filled the hall. She pressed herself against the cold stone wall, trying to become invisible, but that thread in her chest pulled tighter with every passing moment. Then he entered. Alpha Cade Thornridge strode into the Great Hall like a conqueror claiming new territory. He was everything an alpha should be, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and eyes like molten gold. His scent rolled through the room like a wildfire, forest depths and smoldering embers, the sharp bite of ozone before a storm, and underneath it all, tempered steel. Wolves from every pack turned to watch him. He was being groomed to lead the entire Northern Territory, they whispered. The Council had their eye on him. He would unite the packs under one rule, and the bond snapped into place. Alara gasped as the invisible thread became a living rope of pure energy, connecting her heart to his with a force that drove the air from her lungs. It was agony and ecstasy, completion and destruction all at once. Every nerve ending in her body sang with recognition. Mine. Something ancient whispered in her blood. Mate. Across the crowded hall, Cade's head snapped toward her, his golden eyes locked onto hers, and for one heartbeat, one perfect, terrible heartbeat, she saw recognition flare in his gaze. He felt it too. The moon goddess had spoken. Then his expression went cold. The room had gone quiet. Everyone had seen it. The moment the bond activated, visible to those with the sight as a shimmer of golden light between them. The elder performing the ceremony stepped forward, her ancient voice carrying through the silence. The goddess has spoken. Alpha Cade Thornridge and Omega Alara Ashwood are. No. The single word cut through the air like a blade. Cade strode forward, and the crowd parted before him. His scent had gone sharp with ozone and steel, drowning out the embers. Dominance rolled off him in waves that made the lesser wolves bare their throats reflexively. He stopped 3 paces from Alara, close enough that she could feel the heat of him, smell the complex layers of his power. Close enough that the bond sang between them, trying to pull them together. I, Alpha Cade Thornridge, reject you, Omega Alara Ashwood, as my mate." His voice was formal, ritualistic, and utterly without mercy. "I reject this bond. I reject the moon goddess's choice. You are not worthy to stand at my side." The pain was immediate and absolute. Alara had heard stories of bond rejections, whispered in horrified tones. Most wolves never survived them. The severing of a mate bond was like having your soul torn in half while you were still conscious enough to feel every ripping fiber. It started as a burning in her chest, right where her heart beat its frantic rhythm. Then the fire spread, through her ribs, down her spine, into every limb until she was burning from the inside out. She couldn't even scream. Her throat had locked closed. She collapsed to her knees on the cold stone floor, dimly aware of the shocked gasps echoing through the great hall. The bond thrashed like a living thing being murdered, golden light flickering and dying between them. "Do you accept this rejection?" The elder's voice sounded like it was coming from underwater, distorted and distant. Alara's wolf, that tiny, quiet presence, let out a keening wail that only she could hear. But what choice did she have? He didn't want her. He'd made that clear in front of everyone who mattered. She forced the words past her shattered throat. "I accept." The bond snapped. If the initial severing had been fire, this was annihilation. The golden thread connecting them didn't just break, it exploded, sending shockwaves of pure anguish through every cell in her body. She felt the exact moment her wolf retreated so deep inside her that it was like losing a limb. The scent of her own blood filled her nose. She was bleeding from her nose, her ears. Her vision went dark at the edges. Through the haze of pain, she heard Cade's voice, cold and satisfied. "Guards, remove her from my sight." Rough hands grabbed her arms, hauling her upright. Her legs wouldn't support her weight, so they dragged her, her ceremonial gown tearing on the stone floor. The crowd parted again, but this time it wasn't out of respect. It was revulsion. She could smell their judgment, their disgust. An Omega rejected by her alpha mate was the lowest of the low, proof that even the moon goddess had made a mistake. They threw her out the main doors into the winter night. The cold hit her like a physical blow. Snow had been falling for hours, and the temperature had dropped well below freezing. Alara lay where she'd fallen on the icy steps, unable to move, unable to think past the agony still tearing through her chest. The bond was gone. But the phantom pain of its absence was worse than its death had been. "Please." Her voice was barely a whisper. She didn't even know who she was begging. The guards who'd dumped her here, the moon goddess who'd cursed her with this mate, or the universe itself. "Please." The doors slammed shut behind her. Through the thick wood and stone, she could hear the ceremony continuing. Life went on. Cade would find another mate, one worthy of his ambition, and she would die out here in the cold. Rejected wolves rarely survived the night. Somehow, Alara forced herself to move, crawling at first, then staggering to her feet. She stumbled away from the great hall. She had nowhere to go. Her parents' house. They'd made it clear years ago that her weakness shamed them. The pack dormitory. They'd never let her back in. Not after this public humiliation. The forest. She would go to the forest and let the cold take her quietly, away from their judging eyes. Each step was agony. The thin ceremonial gown was already soaked through with snow, clinging to her skin like ice. Her bare feet left bloody prints in the white powder. She couldn't feel them anymore. Couldn't feel much of anything except the gaping wound where her bond had been. Time lost meaning. She walked until she couldn't walk anymore, until the trees around her were so thick and dark that the lights of Silvercrest territory had vanished completely. A blizzard was picking up, wind howling through the branches with a voice that sounded almost alive. Snow fell so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. This is how it ends, she thought distantly. Alone in the snow. Maybe that's better than what I left behind. Her legs gave out. She collapsed against the trunk of a massive oak tree, its gnarled roots providing minimal shelter from the wind. Her body was shutting down. She could feel it happening. First her fingers went numb, then her toes. The cold crept up her limbs with patient inevitability. Somewhere in the darkness, a wolf howled. Then another. Then a third. Alara closed her eyes. Maybe they would make it quick. The howls came closer, circling her position. She could hear them moving through the underbrush, massive bodies displacing snow. 1, 2, 3. She kept counting as consciousness slipped away from her like water through cupped hands. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wolves. A full hunting pack. They would tear her apart before the cold could finish the job. I'm sorry, she thought, though she didn't know who the apology was for. Her parents who'd been shamed by her weakness? Cade, who'd been burdened with an unworthy mate? The moon goddess who'd wasted a bond on someone like her? The darkness took her. Warmth. That was the first thing she noticed. Blessed, impossible warmth surrounding her like a cocoon. Alara's eyes fluttered open, and for a long moment, she couldn't process what she was seeing. Fur, silver gray and thick, pressed against her from all sides. She was buried in a living mound of wolves, their massive bodies radiating heat that had pulled her back from the edge of death. Her fingers, somehow still attached and mobile, buried themselves in the soft coat nearest her face, and a low rumble of contentment answered the touch. Full consciousness returned in a rush. Alara jerked upright. Or tried to. Immediately, 10 pairs of eyes fixed on her, brilliant colors that had no place in nature. Gold and silver, amber and ice blue, even one set that glowed like embers. But what froze her in place wasn't the impossible colors. It was their size. These weren't normal wolves. Each one was easily as large as a horse, with shoulders that would reach her chest if she stood next to them. Their paws were the size of dinner plates, and the power radiating from them made her damaged, quiet wolf press itself flat in instinctive submission. The largest one, the one whose fur she'd been clutching, lifted its massive head. Its eyes were like aged oak and silver moonlight, ancient and knowing. When it looked at her, she felt seen in a way she'd never experienced before. Not looked through. Not looked at. Seen. Then it did something impossible. The air around the great wolf shimmered, and power washed over her in a wave that raised every hair on her body. Bones flowed like water instead of snapping. Muscle and sinew reformed with impossible grace. In the space of 3 heartbeats, where a massive wolf had been, a man now knelt. He was older than Cade, she realized, perhaps by a decade, with silver threading through dark hair that fell to his shoulders. Scars decorated his skin like a warrior's history, but they didn't diminish his presence. If anything, they enhanced it. His scent rolled over her, aged oak and winter snow, pine forests, and the electric charge of an approaching storm. It was wild and ancient, and utterly intoxicating. "We've been waiting for you, matriarch," he said, his voice like distant thunder. Then he bowed his head in a gesture of such profound respect that Alara's mind went blank with confusion. What?" Her voice came out as a croak. "Matriarch? I'm nobody. I'm an Omega. A rejected Omega. You shouldn't even—" "You are the daughter of the first bloodline," he interrupted gently. the one spoken of in prophecy, and you are most certainly not nobody." He gestured to the 9 wolves still surrounding them, their intelligent eyes fixed on her with what could only be described as reverence. "These are the sentinels, my brothers and sisters in oath. We have searched for you across 3 territories for 2 years. We felt the moment your binding shattered." "Binding?" Alara shook her head, trying to make sense of his words. "I don't understand. What prophecy? What binding?" The man. The Alpha. Because he had to be an Alpha with that much power rolling off him, settled into a sitting position, seemingly unconcerned that he was naked in the snow. The other wolves adjusted their positions, creating a windbreak around them both. "My name is Theron," he said, "and I think it's time you learned the truth about who you really are." And what he told her then, no one was prepared for. "There is an old story," Theron began, his voice taking on the cadence of ancient tales told around dying fires. "Old enough that most packs have forgotten it or dismissed it as legend. But the Sentinels remember. We were charged with remembering." He paused, and one of the other wolves, a female with fur like burnished copper and eyes like amber flames, shifted form. She was younger than Theron, with ritual scars marking her shoulders and a warrior's grace in every movement. She settled beside him, and her scent carried notes of cedarwood and wild honey. "The prophecy," she said, her voice rough like she didn't use it often, "speaks of a time when the packs would fall into corruption, when power would matter more than the moon goddess's guidance, when wolves would forget their purpose and become little more than beasts fighting over territory." Her amber eyes fixed on Alara. "It says that when the corruption reaches its peak, when even sacred bonds are rejected for ambition, the matriarch will rise." "The matriarch," Theron continued, "is the first wolf, the original daughter of the moon goddess herself. She comes when the world has forgotten balance, forgotten respect, forgotten that power without wisdom leads only to destruction." He leaned forward slightly. "She will be marked by suppression, power so great that it must be bound, hidden, or it would destroy her before she was ready to wield it. She will be cast out by those who should protect her, and she will rise from death itself to reclaim her throne." Ilara's hands were shaking. That's just a story, a legend. I don't have any power. I can barely feel my wolf. She's always been weak, always been—" "Asleep," Theron interrupted. "Not weak, asleep. Bound by magic so powerful it would take a trained pack shaman to detect it." His expression softened with something that looked like sympathy. "Ilara, when is your birthday?" "The winter solstice," she answered automatically. "Why? And were you born during a blood moon?" Her breath caught. She'd never told anyone that detail. Her parents had always been strangely reluctant to discuss the exact circumstances of her birth. But she remembered overhearing her mother once, speaking in hushed tones to the pack shaman. Blood moon birth. Dangerous. Had to bind it, or she'd have killed us all. "How did you know?" Her voice was barely a whisper. The female sentinel smiled, and it transformed her severe features into something almost gentle. "Because the prophecy says, on the solstice of winter, beneath the blood moon's gaze, the matriarch will be born. She will come in silence, power bound by love and fear. She will suffer until suffering breaks her chains, and she will rise." "Your parents loved you," Theron said quietly. "That's important to understand. They didn't bind your power out of cruelty. They did it because they were terrified. A child born with the matriarch's power would have been hunted by every alpha in the territory, who wanted to control that power or destroy it. They thought they were protecting you. But they doomed you to a half-life instead, the female sentinel added, her voice harder now. Omegas aren't supposed to exist. Did you know that? The classification is a modern invention, a way to label wolves whose power has been damaged or suppressed. You were never meant to be an Omega, Alara. You were meant to be so much more. Alara's mind was reeling. Everything she'd believed about herself, about her place in the world, was crumbling like sand. The binding, she forced herself to ask. You said you felt it shatter. Does that mean the mate bond rejection? Theron confirmed. That kind of trauma, that level of pain and betrayal. It was enough to crack the binding your parents placed on you as an infant. But it didn't just crack it. It obliterated it. He reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and placed a hand over her heart. His palm was warm, even through the tattered remains of her ceremonial gown. Can't you feel it? Your wolf, she's waking up. And goddess help her, he was right. That tiny, quiet presence she'd carried her whole life, that whisper of a wolf that had retreated so deep after the rejection that she thought it had died, was stirring. Not a whisper anymore. Not quiet. It was unfurling inside her like some great beast, waking from centuries of slumber. And with every passing second, it grew stronger. Who are you? She asked it silently, the way she'd learned to communicate with her wolf when she was small. The answer came in a voice like ancient forests and starlight, powerful enough to shake her to her core. I am you. I have always been you. And it's time to wake up. The transformation started without her permission, without any conscious thought. It simply happened. Every wolf was taught to control their shift, to master the balance between human reason and animal instinct. But this wasn't like that. This was her body remembering what it had been denied for 22 years. The pain she'd expected, the snapping of bones and tearing of muscle, never came. Instead, her skeleton flowed like water, reforming with liquid grace. Fur erupted from her skin in a cascade of silver and moonlight white, each strand glowing faintly, as if lit from within. Her senses exploded outward. She could suddenly smell everything. The pine sap in the trees 100 yards away, the muskrat sleeping in its burrow beneath the snow, the complex layering of scents from each of the sentinels. She could hear the heartbeat of every living thing in the forest, from the deer bedded down 2 miles east to the owl hunting on silent wings overhead. But more than that, she could feel them. The sentinel's emotions rolled over her like waves: awe, joy, relief, fierce protectiveness. Even Theron, who seemed so controlled, radiated wonder and something deeper, something that felt like recognition. Her body continued to change. She wasn't just shifting into wolf form, she was growing. Her shoulders broadened, her chest deepened. Her legs lengthened until she stood easily as tall as the sentinels, who had seemed so impossibly large moments ago. Taller, even. Power crackled along her fur like lightning, visible as threads of golden light that danced and coiled. When the transformation finally completed, Alara lifted her head and saw the world through new eyes. Eyes that glowed silver white, lit from within by power that had been caged for far too long. And she howled. The sound tore from her throat with primal force, carrying across the winter forest like a declaration of war. It wasn't a cry of pain or fear. It was a roar of triumph, of recognition, of a queen reclaiming her throne. The snow-laden branches trembled. The wind itself seemed to pause and listen. And in packs across 3 territories, wolves jolted awake from sleep with the inexplicable certainty that something fundamental had just shifted in their world. The sentinels answered her call, their voices joining hers in a harmony that had been practiced in dreams and prophecy for generations. This was the song their bloodlines had been waiting to sing. When the echoes finally faded, Alara looked down at Theron, still in his human form, still kneeling in the snow, his storm-colored eyes bright with something that might have been tears. "She is the matriarch," he said, his voice carrying to all the sentinels. "Our oath is fulfilled. Our search is ended. We stand with her, now and always, until the last howl fades from the world." As one, the 9 wolves, who still held their shifted forms, bowed their heads, exposing their throats in the ultimate gesture of trust and submission. And Alara, who had been nothing, who had been discarded and left to die, who had been told her entire life that she was too weak to matter, understood at last what she really was. She was the beginning and the ending. She was the balance. She was the storm that would reshape everything. She was the matriarch, and the Pax who had forgotten her were about to remember why her bloodline was first. The days that followed blurred together in a haze of discovery and transformation. Theron led them deeper into unclaimed territory, land so wild and ancient that even the most ambitious Pax avoided it. The sentinels moved like shadows through the forest, always keeping her in the center of their formation, a living fortress of fur and fang and absolute devotion. They made camp in a clearing surrounded by standing stones, so old they'd been worn smooth by centuries of weather. Runes covered their surfaces, glowing faintly in the moonlight with words in a language Alara couldn't read, but somehow understood. Here the first wolves ran. Here the goddess walked. Here power remembers itself. The copper-furred sentinel, her name was Kira, Alara learned, took charge of teaching her to control the shifting. "It's not about force," she explained, demonstrating with her own transformation. Her shift was poetry in motion, completely silent and graceful. "It's about listening. Your wolf knows what to do. You just have to stop fighting her." It should have been harder. Every young wolf struggled with their first shifts, often taking years to achieve full control. But Alara's wolf had been waiting for this moment her entire life. After the initial overwhelming transformation, she found she could slip between forms as easily as breathing. Human to wolf. Wolf to human. Back and forth with increasing confidence. "Good," Theron praised, after she'd successfully shifted a dozen times in a row without losing control. He'd remained in human form more often than the others, serving as her primary instructor and guide. "Now try holding a partial shift, just the eyes and the enhanced senses." That proved trickier. The wolf wanted to be all or nothing, resisted being held at some halfway point. But with Theron's patient coaching, Alara eventually managed it, standing in human form, but with her wolf's silver-white eyes and supernatural awareness fully active. "Excellent," he murmured. And his approval sent warmth cascading through her chest that had nothing to do with the wolf and everything to do with the man. She'd been trying not to notice how his presence affected her, how his scent of oak and snow made her want to move closer, how his rare smiles lit something in her that the rejected mate bond had tried to kill. But she couldn't ignore the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and powerful and worth protecting. So different from the way Cade had looked at her, like she was disposable. The other sentinels each took turns sharing their knowledge. There was Marcus, massive even in human form, with dark skin marked by ritual scars and eyes like liquid gold. He taught her combat forms, how to use her size and strength to devastating effect. "You're stronger than any alpha," he told her seriously. But strength without skill is just wasted potential. You need to know where to strike, when to hold back, when to unleash everything. Twins named Soren and Celine, both with fur the color of storm clouds and matching ice blue eyes, showed her how to track and hunt. "The matriarch provides for her pack," Celine said, as they ran through the forest in wolf form, teaching Alara to read the subtle signs of prey and predator alike. Not through dominance, through wisdom. An older sentinel named Garrick, his silver muzzle showing his age, taught her the histories. Pack lineages, territorial boundaries, the old laws that had been forgotten or twisted over generations. "Knowledge is your greatest weapon," he said in his gravelly voice. "Alphas rule through fear. The matriarch rules through knowing exactly what's needed and when." Days turned to weeks. The winter solstice approached, her first birthday since her power had awakened. Alara felt herself growing stronger with each passing day, not just physically, but in ways she couldn't quite articulate. Her empathic abilities, for instance, had expanded beyond simply feeling emotions. She could sometimes see the bonds between the sentinels, threads of loyalty and brotherhood and sisterhood that connected them like a web of light. And she was discovering new abilities that even Theron seemed surprised by. She could heal minor injuries with a touch, could calm a panicked animal with a thought, could send a pulse of energy through the earth that made every wolf within a mile bare their throats in involuntary submission. "The prophecy mentioned you would be marked by 3 gifts," Theron told her one night, as they sat by the fire, the other sentinels sleeping around them in their wolf forms. "Command, healing, and sight. The ability to lead, to restore, and to see the truth of bonds and connections. You're manifesting all 3. "It's overwhelming," Alara admitted quietly. She was in human form now, wrapped in furs to guard against the cold. Theron sat close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his complex scent. "I spent my whole life being told I was nothing. Now I'm supposed to be... what? A queen? I don't even know how to be confident, let alone powerful." "Confidence comes with time," Theron said. His hand found hers in the darkness, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. "And you're already more powerful than you realize. Not because of the magic, Ilara, but because you survived. Because you were rejected and cast out and left to die, and you still have compassion in your heart. You still chose to live. That kind of strength is rarer than any magical ability." She turned to look at him, finding those storm-colored eyes already fixed on her. "Why?" she asked. "Why did you search for me? You said you've been looking for 2 years. Why risk everything for a prophecy that might not even be real?" "Because I knew you were real," he said simply. "I felt you. The sentinels are bound to the matriarch by oaths older than pack law. We carry the echo of your power in our blood. 2 years ago, on the winter solstice, I felt you for the first time. Just a flicker, like a candle flame in the darkness. I knew you existed. I knew you were suffering. And I knew that if we didn't find you, something terrible was going to happen." Cade's rejection, Alara realized. Theron nodded grimly. "If we'd found you before the binding shattered naturally, we could have broken it safely, with ritual and care. Instead," he gestured to her, and his expression held both anger and awe. "You broke free through trauma and pain. It could have killed you. Almost did. But you saved me," she said softly. "You and the sentinels. You kept me alive. We will always keep you alive." The intensity in his voice made her shiver. "That is our oath, our purpose, and our choice." He paused, then added more quietly, "Though I will admit, it's become more than duty." The words hung between them, heavy with implications. Alara's heart stuttered in her chest. "Theron?" "I know," he said. You're still healing from the rejection. And I won't. I would never presume to replace what was stolen from you. But I want you to know that when you're ready, if you're ever ready, the bond between the matriarch and the Sentinel commander is a chosen bond, not a fated one. It's built on respect and trust and genuine care, and it's yours to claim or refuse without any pressure from me. Ilara felt tears prick her eyes. After being rejected so brutally, after having her worth measured and found lacking, having someone offer her a bond with no strings attached, no expectations, it was almost too much to process. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed her hand gently, then released it and stood. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we start working on your command voice, and trust me," he added with a slight smile, "you're going to enjoy that particular ability." He shifted forms and padded away to join the others, leaving Ilara alone with her thoughts and the crackling fire. For the first time in her life, she felt something unfamiliar blooming in her chest, not the desperate, painful need that the mate bond had created. Something quieter, something that felt like hope. The scout found them 3 weeks after Ilara's transformation. She sensed him before she saw him, a foreign scent on the wind, carrying notes of nervousness and hostile intent. The sentinels reacted instantly, forming a defensive circle around her, their hackles raised and lips pulled back in silent snarls. "Easy," Ilara said, her voice carrying the edge of command she'd been practicing. The sentinels didn't relax, but they held their positions rather than charging. She shifted to wolf form and stepped through their ranks, ignoring Theron's low growl of warning. The scout was a young beta, probably not even 20, with light brown fur and wide, terrified eyes. He'd frozen in place the moment he saw her, every instinct screaming at him to bare his throat. She could smell his fear, acrid and sharp, mixed with confusion. He doesn't understand what he's seeing, she realized. He's never seen anything like us. Please, the scout stammered in the way wolves could speak to each other in shifted form, not with words, but with intention and understanding. "I'm from Silvercrest Pack. Alpha Cade sent me to scout for rogues. I don't want trouble. I'll leave. I swear I'll leave." Silvercrest, her old pack, the pack that had thrown her away like garbage. Ilara felt her wolf's anger rise, felt power crackling along her fur. "You can leave," she said, her voice carrying supernatural weight that made the scout whimper. "But you'll carry a message with you. Tell Alpha Cade that the wolf he rejected, the one he left to die in the winter, she survived. And she's coming home." The scout didn't need to be told twice. He turned and bolted, running flat out toward Silvercrest territory. Behind her, Ilara felt Theron shift to human form. "They'll come," he said quietly, "probably in force. An alpha like Cade won't tolerate a challenge to his authority, and that's what you just issued." "Good," Ilara replied, also shifting back. She turned to face the sentinels, all of them watching her with fierce pride. "It's time. I can't keep hiding out here, learning to be powerful, while wolves like Cade continue to corrupt the old ways. The prophecy says I'm meant to restore balance. Let's start with my home pack." Kira grinned, showing too many teeth. "About damn time." They came 2 days later, just after dawn. Ilara was ready. She'd chosen the same clearing where the sentinels had first camped, the one with the ancient standing stones. Sacred ground. Neutral ground. The perfect place to make a stand. The war party from Silvercrest was exactly as large as she'd expected. 23 wolves, mostly alphas and betas, with Cade at their head. They stopped at the tree line, maintaining formation, assessing the situation with military precision. Ilara stood in the center of the clearing in human form, dressed in clothes the sentinels had salvaged from a nearby human town, simple but sturdy. The sentinels surrounded her in a loose circle, still in wolf form, their massive sizes making the Silvercrest wolves look like puppies by comparison. Cade shifted to human form and stepped forward. Even at this distance, Alara could smell him. Forest and embers, ozone and steel. Once, that scent had meant everything to her. Now it just reminded her of pain and betrayal. "Alara Ashwood," he called, his voice carrying across the clearing with alpha authority. "Stand down. You're harboring rogues and trespassing in unclaimed territory. By pack law, I order you to disperse this, whatever this is, and return to Silvercrest for judgment." "Judgment," Alara repeated, and she was pleased to hear that her voice didn't shake. "Tell me, Alpha Cade, what crime have I committed that requires judgment? Was it surviving your rejection? Or perhaps it's claiming the territory you were too afraid to enter?" A woman stepped forward from the Silvercrest ranks, and Alara's wolf snarled in recognition. Seraphine. Beautiful, ambitious Seraphine, with her honey blonde hair and cruel smile. She'd been one of the alphas competing for Cade's attention before the lunar pairing ceremony. The scent of cinnamon and iron hung around her like perfume. "You're claiming to have a pack," Seraphine sneered. "An Omega can't hold a pack. Look at you, little Alara, playing dress-up with rogues. Did they take pity on you? Tell you pretty lies to make you feel special?" "Enough!" Cade snapped. But Seraphine was already shifting, her wolf form smaller than the sentinels, but sleek and fast. She was done with words. She charged. Alara felt time slow down, felt every nuance of the attack before it came. She saw the exact angle Seraphine would take, the specific point where she'd leap for the throat. And she knew, with perfect certainty, how to counter it. She shifted mid-step, her transformation so fluid that Seraphine faltered for just an instant. That was all Alara needed. When Seraphine launched herself through the air, Alara was already moving. She sidestepped with impossible grace, caught the other wolf in mid-leap, and used her own momentum against her. The impact as Seraphine hit the ground drove the air from her lungs. Before she could recover, Alara's jaws closed around her throat, not biting, just holding. One squeeze and it would be over. The entire clearing went silent. Alara held the position for a 3 count, making sure everyone understood what had just happened. Seraphine, an alpha female known for her combat prowess, had been defeated in less than 2 seconds. Then she released her, stepping back and shifting to human form. "I don't want to kill you," she said clearly, "but make no mistake, I could have. Remember that." Seraphine scrambled away, whimpering, her tail tucked tight between her legs. The scent of fear and humiliation rolled off her in waves. "Impossible," someone in the Silvercrest ranks whispered. Then the sentinels shifted. As one, the 10 wolves transformed to human form, revealing themselves in their full power. Theron stood at her right hand, Marcus at her left. The others fanned out, and their collective presence was overwhelming. These weren't rogues. These weren't even normal alphas. "The Sentinels of the Matriarch," Theron announced, his voice carrying with supernatural resonance. "Oath-bound guardians, we have found what was lost. We have awakened what was sleeping." He gestured to Alara. "And we stand witness. She is the matriarch returned, the first daughter's bloodline, the one prophesied to restore balance when corruption reached its peak." "Lies," Seraphine spat, though she didn't dare approach again. "Propaganda and lies." But Cade's face had gone white. His golden eyes were fixed on Alara with dawning horror. "The blood moon birth," he whispered. "The prophecy. Goddess save me. What have I done?" "You rejected your mate for ambition," Alara said, and now she let her eyes shift to that glowing silver white, let just a fraction of her power show. You chose political advantage over the moon goddess's will. You broke sacred law, and in doing so, she smiled without humor. You freed me. So in a way, Alpha Cade, I should thank you. If you'd accepted the bond, I'd still be that powerless little Omega, and the binding on my power would never have shattered. The wind picked up, swirling snow around the clearing. The standing stones began to glow softly, responding to the power in the air. And Alara felt her wolf rising to the surface, felt the command ability that Theron had helped her master thrumming through her veins. I am Alara Ashwood, first daughter of the moon goddess's bloodline, she said, and her voice carried supernatural weight that made every wolf present feel it in their bones. I am the matriarch, and this territory, from the great river in the east to the mountain range in the west, from the northern glaciers to the southern meadows, is mine. Not by conquest, not by inheritance, but by ancient right that predates your pack laws and power structures. Alpha Cade. She focused on him, on the wolf who'd torn her heart out and thrown her away. Kneel. It wasn't a request. The command rolled through the air like thunder, infused with power that even an alpha couldn't fully resist. Cade's legs buckled. He fought it. She could see the strain on his face, smell the ozone spike in his scent as he tried to resist. But in the end, he dropped to one knee, his head bowed. Mercy, he forced out. I beg mercy, matriarch. Do you? Alara moved closer, circling him slowly. You begged for nothing when you rejected me. You offered no mercy when you had me thrown into the winter to die. Why should I be more generous than you? Because you're better than him, Theron said quietly from behind her. Because vengeance without justice is just more cruelty, and you're meant to restore balance, not tip the scales the other way. Alara looked at her sentinel commander, her chosen, and found wisdom in those storm-colored eyes. He was right. Killing Cade would be easy. Destroying him would feel good. But it wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't restore what was broken. On your feet, she told Cade. He rose shakily, but kept his head bowed. The mate bond between us is severed. That much cannot be repaired, and I wouldn't want it to be. But you still owe a debt. To me, to the moon goddess, to every Omega you've ever dismissed as worthless. She turned to address the entire Silver Crest war party, letting them all feel the weight of her power and authority. This is my judgment. Alpha Cade, you will return to Silver Crest Pack, and you will implement new laws. First, the classification of Omega is abolished. All wolves will be assessed by their actual strength and ability, not by assumptions about weakness. Second, no mate bond may be rejected without mutual consent and proper ritual. The moon goddess's choices will be respected. Third, you will pay tribute to this territory annually, not in resources, but in service. Your strongest wolves will spend 1 month each year helping to rebuild what corruption has destroyed. And if I refuse? Cade asked, his voice hollow. Alara smiled, and it was not a gentle expression. Then the sentinels will remind you why the matriarch's word is law. 10 dire wolves against your entire pack. Do you like those odds? Cade's jaw clenched. He looked at the sentinels, really looked at them for the first time, and whatever he saw in their expressions made the last of his resistance crumble. I accept your judgment, matriarch. Good. She turned away from him, dismissing him like he'd once dismissed her. Now leave my territory. All of you. And spread word of what you've seen here. The matriarch has returned. The old ways are being restored. And any alpha who continues down the path of corruption will answer to me. The Silvercrest wolves didn't need further encouragement. They shifted and fled, leaving only Cade and Seraphine behind. Seraphine because she was still too shaken from her defeat to move quickly. Cade because he was staring at Alara like she was a stranger. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. "I didn't just reject a mate. I rejected your destiny," Alara finished. "Yes, you did. And you'll have to live with that knowledge." "But Cade?" She met his golden eyes with her silver-white ones. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm willing to let you prove you can be better than you were. Don't waste the chance." He nodded once, sharp and military, then shifted and ran after his pack. Seraphine scrambled after him, casting one last fearful glance at Alara before disappearing into the trees. Silence fell over the clearing. Then Kira let out a howl of triumph, and the other sentinels joined her. The sound echoed across the territory like a declaration of victory. Theron approached Alara, still in human form, and there was pride written in every line of his face. "You did it," he said. "Justice without cruelty. Power with wisdom. The matriarch in truth." "We did it," Alara corrected. "I couldn't have survived without you. Any of you." She looked at each of the sentinels in turn, these warriors who'd given up everything to search for her, to protect her, to teach her what she needed to become. "You're not just my guardians. You're my family, my pack, and I—" She broke off, overcome by emotions she didn't have words for. But she didn't need words. She let her empathic ability open fully, let them feel exactly what she felt. Gratitude, affection, fierce loyalty, and love in its purest form. Theron reached for her hand, and this time, she took it without hesitation. His calloused fingers intertwined with hers, and she felt that beginning spark of something that wasn't the mate bond, but could be just as powerful. Something chosen, something earned. "We should return to the standing stones," Marcus suggested, breaking the moment gently. "Establish proper territory markers. If word spreads that the matriarch has claimed this land, others will come. Not all of them hostile, but we need to be prepared." "Agreed," Alara said. She looked around the clearing, at the ancient stones, at her sentinels, at the forest stretching in every direction. Her forest, her territory, her responsibility. "We have a lot of work to do. The corruption Cade represented exists in every pack, every territory. We've just started." "Then it's a good thing," Theron said with a slight smile, "that we have time. And you, matriarch, are immortal." That was news to her. "I'm what?" Kira laughed at her expression. "Did we forget to mention that part? The matriarch's bloodline doesn't age normally. You'll live as long as your purpose requires. Could be centuries." She shrugged. "Hope you didn't have any short-term plans." Alara stared at them all, these impossible warriors with their impossible claims. Then, despite everything, the trauma, the betrayal, the pain she'd survived, she started laughing. Real laughter, bright and genuine, the sound of someone who'd walked through fire and found herself on the other side, transformed into something beautiful and powerful and unbreakable. "Centuries," she repeated, "to fix everything that's broken, to restore balance, to prove that power doesn't have to mean cruelty." She squeezed Theron's hand. "All right then. I guess we'd better get started." The sentinels howled in agreement, and the sound carried across 3 territories like a promise. The matriarch had returned. And the world of wolves would never be the same. The months that followed established a new order in the supernatural world. Alara claimed her territory officially, marking it with ancient rituals that had the standing stones blazing with power, visible for miles. Wolves from distant packs came to see if the legends were true, and they always left believers after witnessing the matriarch and her sentinels. Some came seeking justice for wrongs done to them, omegas who'd been abused, mates forcibly separated, wolves cast out for political convenience. Elara heard each case personally, and her judgments became legendary for their fairness and wisdom. She never killed when exile would suffice, never destroyed when rebuilding was possible. Her parents came eventually, Marcus and Lyanna Ashwood, their faces haggard with guilt. They knelt before her in the clearing and confessed everything, how they'd bound her power to save her life, how they'd watched her suffer year after year, but been too afraid to undo what they'd done, how the rejection had broken their hearts even as it freed her. "I don't forgive you yet," Elara told them, the words that had become her standard response to those seeking absolution. "But I understand why you did it, and I'm giving you a chance to prove you can do better. There are omegas across every territory who've been damaged by corruption. Help them. Advocate for them. Teach other parents that binding their children's power out of fear only creates more suffering." They accepted the terms with bowed heads and trembling lips, and Elara knew they'd spend the rest of their lives trying to earn back what they'd lost. Seraphine never recovered from her public defeat. Stripped of her rank within Silvercrest and unable to find standing in any other pack, she eventually left for the human lands, where wolves lived hidden and diminished. It was a kinder fate than many thought she deserved. And Cade kept his word. He implemented the new laws, paid the required tribute, and slowly transformed from the ambitious alpha who valued power above all else into a leader who finally understood what true strength meant. He never tried to contact Elara directly, but she received reports of his progress. He'd never be the mate the moon goddess intended, but perhaps he'd become the alpha his pack deserved. As for Theron and the Sentinels, they remained exactly what they'd always been: her foundation, her strength, her chosen family. The bond between Elara and Theron grew slowly, carefully, built on respect and genuine affection rather than supernatural compulsion. On the anniversary of her transformation, he gave her a necklace carved from ancient oak, the tree where she'd nearly died, and asked formally if she would accept him as her chosen mate. She said yes with tears in her eyes and laughter on her lips, and their bonding ceremony under the full moon was attended by wolves from a dozen territories. It was a celebration of everything they'd rebuilt together, every balance they'd restored. But not everyone was pleased with the new order. In the far northern reaches, in territories so remote that even the matriarch's influence hadn't reached them yet, ancient forces were stirring. The blood moon was coming, a rare alignment that happened once in a generation. And with it, something old and hungry was waking up. But that, as they say, is a story for another time. And so Elara's journey from rejected Omega to the matriarch brought balance back to a world that had forgotten what it meant to respect the moon goddess's wisdom. She learned that true power isn't about dominance or fear. It's about knowing when to show mercy and when to demand justice, when to fight and when to heal. Her story reminds us that our darkest moments can become the catalyst for our greatest transformations, and that sometimes the people who throw us away are doing us the greatest favor. What do you think? Could you survive being rejected by your fated mate? Would you choose vengeance or justice? Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey through Elara's transformation from outcast to queen, please hit that like button, share this video with fellow Wolf Romance fans, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss the next chapter. Because the blood moon is rising, and ancient threats are awakening in the north, the matriarch will need all her power and all of you for what comes next. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next chapter.